Rudy Giuliani alleging widespread election fraud at a press conference yesterday, saying that the number of flawed ballots is more than double the margin that Joe Biden won in key states. The campaign alleged the following. Number one, observers were prevented from viewing mail-in ballots. Number two, officials were told not to look for ballot defects. Number three, they were told to backdate mail-in ballots. Number four, the Dominion voting systems used in multiple states has ties to the Venezuelan government, and votes were counted overseas. Now, Dominion responded to Fox Business in a statement. They say this: the latest flood of absurdities is deeply concerning. Dominion is plainly a nonpartisan American company with no ties to Venezuela or Cuba. Vote counts are conducted by county and state election officials, not by Dominion or any other election technology company. That is from Dominion. Joining me right now over the phone right now to respond to all of this is the attorney for President Trump, former federal prosecutor herself, and the author of the book Conviction Machine, Sidney Powell. Sidney, thanks very much for being here. I want to first off start off with your response to what Dominion says. Dominion is calling all of the allegations that you and Rudy Giuliani and Jenna Ellis have made absurd. Your response?
Well, it's almost laughable. They've closed up their offices and moved elsewhere. 100 of their employees have eradicated any sign of their affiliation with Dominion from their LinkedIn accounts. They're fleeing like rats leaving the sinking ship. So I think there's a whole lot more there than they care to discuss. They also declined to go in front of the Pennsylvania legislature today, who wanted to ask questions of several of their officials. So they have a very serious problem. They created the system in Venezuela for Hugo Chavez to rig the elections and make sure he won. They've sold that for that very purpose to other countries, and they brought it to this country for that very purpose, and they've used it that way. We've got evidence that shows it. We have firsthand testimony of witnesses who saw it happen, know how it was developed, know why it was developed, and saw it work to achieve its purposes, and many others. And we have irrefutable statistical and mathematical evidence.
Sidney, what do you make of this Eric Coomer, who's been written about in the press? He's the current vice president of U.S. engineering at Dominion Voting Systems. Apparently, he admitted on social media to rigging voting machines in order to prevent President Trump from winning re-election. He's an activist. He's been very active on social media. And apparently he said to someone who was overheard, "Don't worry about the election. Trump's not going to win. I made blank, blank sure of it." Who is Eric Coomer, and what do you know about this individual?
Well, he holds several patents on some of the things they use in the voting machine. So he knows exactly how it works. He knows how to use it. And we have information about him being in other countries for rigged elections there. We have pictures of him in other countries with helping people rig elections. So he's got a long history of accomplishing the result that they want accomplished, and I'm sure it's for money.
All right, Sidney, I want you to respond to what Tucker Carlson said last night, Sidney. I don't know if you watched it, but Tucker Carlson said that he had invited you on his show to share evidence of the software flipping votes, and he said you got angry and refused to provide evidence for your claims of voting software flipping votes. How do you respond to Tucker Carlson? Did you get angry with the show because they texted you and asked you to please provide evidence of what you're alleging?
No, I didn't get angry with the request to provide evidence. In fact, I sent an affidavit to Tucker that I had not even attached to a pleading yet to help him understand the situation, and I offered him another witness who could explain the mathematics and statistical evidence far better than I can. I'm not really a numbers person, but he was very insulting, demanding, and rude, and I told him not to contact me again in those terms.
So Sidney, will you be able to prove this evidence that you say you have of this technology flipping votes from Trump to Biden? How will you prove that, Sidney?
Well, we have witnesses that know how it's done and have seen it done, Maria. That's firsthand evidence of how it works and that it works. And we will also have a whole lot more evidence as the days progress. I mean, I'm still getting information through a fire hose. We can't even keep up with the witnesses that are calling in and wanting to give affidavits and provide evidence. So this is very early in a stage of any case, aside from one of this massive magnitude, that frankly should have been investigated and stopped by our law enforcement community within a decade ago. We shouldn't be in this position, and here we are, a handful of civil lawyers trying to do the work of a massive government institution and the biggest worldwide corruption fraud ever exposed.
So Sidney, what about this comment from the Dominion side saying we have no ties to Venezuela? What specifically are the ties to Venezuela? You and Rudy said that our votes in America go back to a foreign land, that they are looked at and processed potentially in Europe. Dominion is saying we have no ties to Venezuela, no ties to Cuba. Can you explain that?
All I can tell you is that, well, the company might have somehow severed or tried to sever the relationships recently. I don't know how they are parsing their words, but I can tell you that the company was started with Venezuelan money in Venezuela for the express purpose of rigging elections for Hugo Chavez. We have people that were there at his side while it was all done. They were in the control room and watched how the votes were flipped. They can watch the votes in real time. We have evidence now of information from the systems going to 3 or 4 different foreign countries during the time of the election. So those countries themselves could have watched the live votes come in and changed the numbers. There's significant evidence of foreign interference of the worst communist countries on the earth with our election.
Now, Sidney, Rudy Giuliani last night was on Hannity, and he said this had to come from someplace in the Biden campaign as an instruction to all of them. Because he said that once you had a flaw in one Dominion machine, you saw a similar flaw in many different machines. So what was Rudy referring to, that this had to come from someplace in the Biden campaign as an instruction to all of them, Sidney?
I don't know what specific evidence he was referring to. We've had to divide and to conquer this monster that we're facing. And I am focusing more on the technology and the fraud, and he is working the individual witnesses on that side of things. And we haven't even had time.
Sidney, let me ask you this. A lot of people out there want to believe what's happening and what you are presenting because they want to make sure that this was a fair election and they want to make sure that their vote counted. Do you believe that you will be able to prove this in court in the next 2 weeks? I recognize you've said, and Jenna Ellis has said, we're not litigating this for the public media. We're not on a TV show. We want the courts to see the evidence, and it may go up to the Supreme Court. You've got about 2 weeks, Sidney. Will you be able to present, are you planning to present actual evidence of all that you've said? Dominion voting machines, swapping votes from Trump to Biden, as well as an effort to actually change the results of an election. You'll be able to prove that in court in the next 2 weeks.
Yes, I fully expect we will be able to prove all of it in court within the next 2 weeks, although the fraud case itself doesn't have to be done within the 2 weeks. But we have more than enough evidence now. We have more evidence now than half the prison population is imprisoned on of this egregious fraud. I mean, the evidence is really stunning, Maria.
Really? Okay, what's the most stunning, most egregious? Give me one thing that's the most egregious and most stunning, Sidney, as we wrap up here.
Well, one of the most impressive pieces of evidence is the affidavit of the young military officer who saw it all done and was there when it was created. He knows exactly how it works. He was briefed on it. And many other people are talking every day about how it worked. We've got Eric Coomer, as you said, admitting on tape that he rigged the election for Biden and hated Trump. We've got their social media posts. We've got all kinds of evidence that is mathematically irrefutable by experts, including 3 professors at Princeton. And it all wraps up and proves the same thing. The evidence of individual poll watchers who saw votes come in, saw the machines manipulated. The machines are never supposed to be hooked up to the internet. At least 30 of them were, according to a published article that's already out. That's an egregious breach of election law in itself. That should never have happened. That should automatically invalidate anything coming out of those machines in every state that happened in, if not across the country, because they can change everything as they're watching it.
Okay. All right, Sidney, thanks very much. We, of course, will be on this and keep following it. Sidney Powell, thanks for joining us. Stay with us at the top of the 8 a.m. hour. We'll talk once again with Attorney for President Trump, Jenna Ellis.